This is Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Adam Carolla.
Yeah, get it on, got to get it on. No choice but get on. Mandate, get on. Welcome to the best hour or so in the universe. It's Reasonable Doubt. I'm Adam Carolla. It's Mark Garrigus over there.
In the studio.
In the studio.
I'm feeling pretty good about being in the studio. I came with my son Jake, who I've been calling Two-Buck Chuck and Two-Chin Vin, his sidekick. You know why Two-Buck Chuck?
Mm-mm.
Wait, you should be able to guess Two-Buck Chuck.
Well, I know what Two-Buck Chuck is.
Yeah, but that's the wine. But
right.
like he packed on a couple of quarantine pounds. So now I call him Two-Buck Chuck. And then his sidekick, Tay, I called Two-Chin Vin. So that's there. So they instead, because I wanted to get more creative. You call them Beavis and Butthead. But of their generation, I call them the poor downtrodden youth.
Yeah, you're going to give him an eating disorder. Like, he's going to go into a shame spiral.
Are you kidding? His mother, Paulette, she will tell him, you got to make him exercise. You got to take the food out of it. She does. The idea that she's got a son who's got a little bit of a gut will send her into the stratosphere. Did you know that?
Well, Paulette walks
about 18 miles a day.
Yeah, 18 miles a day. She's like, you know what she is? She's like one of those Polaris pool things. It just keeps skimming. It just keeps going around. It just keeps going around. Every time I leave my house, I see her just making the rounds.
Do you know what the latest bane of my existence is now? Tenny got engaged. I don't know if you know this. Yeah, thank you.
The best part about planning a wedding is when you go, $6,700 for flowers? And they go, hey, that's a bargain.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's a bargain.
They said, we're going to do it at the house. That'll save money. And they just sent me over a rental company's bill, which is the small GDP of a former Eastern European country. It's mind-boggling.
Well, I will say this about Tenny. She's kind of the Armenian Ivanka Trump.
Yeah, there's definitely.
I have been in the presence of both. They're very well put together. They're educated, and quite a catch.
And I always compare Paulette to Ivanka to Melania anyway. So there's a certain pair. And then should I go down on Jake? Is Jake Don Jr. or Eric? That's that you could have some fun with that, right?
I think him is a little bit of Baron with a little bit of Eric mixed in. With
a veneer of Eric. Have you ever heard Barron speak? I've never heard him speak.
No, he's not allowed to speak.
He's not allowed to speak, but he's about 6'7" now at age 15.
I saw a picture of those guys walking on the lawn, and he's towering over Trump, who's 6'3" and change,
right?
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of the family, the book that the
Mary Trump. Have you read it? Okay, it's sold. Did you see how many copies it sold?
Well, it sold 950,000 units in the first day or something.
I don't understand. We've talked famously about book publishers. They knew going into it to have that many copies printed, because that's an astounding. As somebody who's been a New York Times bestseller, as you have, and I think I was for about 30 seconds, that kind of an order is almost unheard of, is it not?
Look, I went on. My book came out 3-4 weeks ago. I went on Tucker Carlson. It sold out the next day on Amazon, and it was sold out for a month.
All work,
obviously,
no joke.
Yeah, they did not. I'm your emotional support animal. So they did not print enough, but they may have printed enough, or a lot of that can be Kindle, obviously, and a lot of it can be ebook, not ebook, but audible book as well. I saw, now, Gary, sorry, you're going to have to run and find this interview. I had Max Zapata cut it up, but I had Erin Burnett, out front, was interviewing the niece's best friend.
Yeah, I saw that. There was a brief period of time where she was restrained. Mary Trump was restrained, had a temporary restraining order, which is astonishing. I didn't think you could get prior restraint.
Right.
And then, so she put out her best friend to go do the circuit.
Right. Now, this was a clip, And, I always kind of think of you because I think about you and I think about prep and I think about being deposed and I think about how important that element of your business is. And this interview was an insane interview because
it was a car wreck.
She
right?
basically asked her 3 or 4 questions. She couldn't answer any of them. And I, as a person that was kind of interested in the story, thought, that's it? Where's the bombshells? What's going on? Gary might be able to or find it at some point.
Well,
give him a
what
second.
is this is a great free association. What's your takeaway from this book so far?
I don't. Somebody
he paid somebody to take
the SATs
for him.
Right.
Okay. I mean, that I think
sounds about right.
I defended an Armo who was doing that. The Armo was it was on the law school aptitude test, which is interesting because this week now the bar exam is going to be remote, and they've lowered the level upon which the passing score.
The Armo paid someone to take the test. You wouldn't pay an Armo to take Why don't you just
want my money back.
Go fail it.
I paid an Armo and he failed.
Why don't you just go fail it yourself? Why do you have to cut out the middleman?
No, the Armo was good.
Oh, really?
I wish I remember the facts.
Found the one good.
Because the Armo went into the testing location in order to get the test or surreptitiously convey the test questions to another jurisdiction where, like, it was either Hawaii or New York. I don't remember the exact facts of it, but there was hours that had, because of time zone differences, and the Armo was trying to get the questions to somebody outside of the jurisdiction. So he was really more the bagman. And he got caught and then was running out of the testing site and got into a fisticuffs with one of the proctors and was charged with assault. It was quite a story.
They're amongst the sneakiest of all the breeds, the Armos.
I've always said about Armos, the thing about Armos that I've never understood, because they're very, it's that old, it goes back to another racist trope, which was, it happened one night with Clark Gable, the movie. And he walks into a hotel room.
Wait a minute. It happened when the movie with Clark Gable. Right. Okay.
He walks into a hotel room, and there's a string across the room where you can put your clothes up to dry. Mm-hmm. And Gable walks in and says something to the effect of, paraphrasing, clever those Armenians or something like that, because it was ingenious. And I've always said, yeah, Armos are clever, but if there's a direct legal way to go from A to C, they always want to go to Y or Z first and then do a U-turn and come back to C.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. They say, like a athlete, Muhammad Ali or whatever, they'll say, it ain't bragging if you can back it up. Right. And it ain't a stereotype if it's true. That's what I will say about the Armos.
There are some... for years, back in the 90s, I represented large swaths of Armos who had immigrated from the Soviet Union as it broke up, and they came over here. And back then, they started to call them the Armenian Mafia, but then that became impolitic. So it became the Eurasian Crime Force, Eurasian Organized Crime Force Task Force. And I was trying cases in federal court, defending them there, defending them in state court. They'd have experts out of the Glendale Police Department as to the organized crime structure and things like that. But they were very, very clever. I remember I've had this in 3 different trials where I'm cross-examining in the Armos with credit cards that if you go and put your credit card in at the gas station and then pull it out, and I remember one Armo who was Parmaz, I think was his name. And I said, well, did you just get my stuff when I did that at the gas station? He goes, as soon as you pulled out. I said, what do you mean as soon as I pull out? As soon as you pull your credit card out, it's mine. And they'd be able to read it and then swipe it and then do the fraud. And it was incredible, the technology that they could get in order to steal it from you. And I've always blamed this on the Russians and the Russian dominance of the Soviet Union, that they took the Republic of Armenia and took a people who traditionally were, for millennia, we were a Christian nation. And then There's always this kind of, you got to get around the totalitarian government, so you become clever in order to get around it. And that usually means defrauding the government. There was kind of an institutionalized cultural thing about having to deal in order to get through society back in the 80s or 90s. Because I remember when...
That's interesting. So it's just, you almost develop a skill of working around a system.
Yeah. And they really... come over here and you drop them into the U.S., and they assume that the government is the same. There was kind of this mentality for years that the government was the same, that the government was anti. You had to develop a skill set to get around the government here as well.
No, I have one working at the other shop, and it's like every time someone goes, I got to go get my car smog checked, he'll go, I got a guy. All right, so what stories are we have the videos as long as we're on it. If you want to talk about unvetted, like what I'm saying is so Mark, if you have a client and the client is heading in and it's going to be deposed, you're going to have a very long conversation with some sort of dry runs and things like that, where you go, look, here's what I want, here's what I don't want. If they ask this, here's the way you answer it.
Okay, do you know what I show people? Gary will find this to play right after this one. Yeah. But Gary, find the Jerry Lewis question and answer, I think, with the Hollywood Reporter.
That's the greatest. But now this is Erin Burnett, and she's talking to Donald Trump's niece's best friend because she has a gag order.
And because the gardener was apparently unavailable.
She wants to know who the guy is who took the test, who took the SATs for Trump. Amongst front, I think, with Erin Burnett. Sorry.
Tonight, President Trump's brother making a last-ditch effort to stop the niece's tell-all book from publishing. His lawyers asking the judge to continue a gag order against Mary Trump, saying that her personal stories aren't protected political free speech. This comes as everyone is asking the big question: who is Joe Shapiro, the friend who Mary Trump says took the SAT test for Trump? Out front now, Alice Hafter-Frankston. She is Mary Trump's best friend. She is speaking out on Mary's behalf as Mary's under that gag order. So I want to start with this question because it's gotten a lot of people talking. The allegation in the book, in Mary's book, that Trump paid his friend, a man named Joe Shapiro, to take his SATs for him. So everyone's been talking about this Joe Shapiro, and they found this Joe Shapiro who went to the University of Pennsylvania with Trump, and his wife, the former professional tennis player Pam Shriver, says there's no way it was him. He, of course, has passed away. Can you clear this up for us? Is that the Joe Shapiro that Mary is alleging did this, or is it someone else?
That's not the Joe Shapiro, and the timeline doesn't match up, and it wouldn't be logical. This Joe Shapiro and Mary's uncle would have been at Penn at the same time. That's not the one.
Right, so you're saying they hadn't even met at this point.
Joe Shapiro is a really common name on the East Coast.
Yes, really yes, it is, which I think is a fair point to make. It is.
So blew the lid off this
the White House claim is absurd, completely false. Those are their words. And is there anything more you can tell us about this person? And I know because there just is so much focus on it, obviously, because, you know, she's saying this sets up the kind of person that the president was and is, you know, his dishonesty and his lies, and that it started at this point. Is there anything more we're going to find out about that Joe Shapiro that she says did this, and, you know, whether he's still alive?
I don't think that there's going to be more about it because really it's only part and parcel.
All right.
Wait. Okay. Where do we start? Let's start with Joe Shapiro. It's like, is it this Joe Shapiro? No, I don't think it's that Joe Shapiro. You're telling me that if CNN had the opportunity to interview the Joe Shapiro, that wouldn't be the biggest get that any booker could get over there?
Right. But what I'm saying is you got to do a little pre-interview and a little prep.
There was nothing there.
You have the person's home number, call them, and ask them.
Say, which Joe Shapiro is it? By the way, Joe Shapiro almost sounds like a phony name, though, doesn't it? Joe Shapiro?
Yes.
I don't know. If it was Bob Shapiro or if it was Robert Shapiro, but Joe Shapiro?
The other bombshell that was in this interview that we didn't get to was when the niece showed up at Mar-a-Lago, I think, and after Donald had played golf, and she was like 27 and wearing a bikini, he just like looked up and went like, wow, you're stacked or something like that, which is obviously very believable with
believable
with Trump, but it's still what we're looking for is stuff that doesn't seem like it's on brand.
Right.
And this is on brand. You know, if Jimmy Carter said that, then that would be a story. So far, this isn't. But yet, they've sold 1 million units.
1 million books. I don't. So who are we to give them to criticize? People don't quite understand how insane it is to sell 950,000 books on the first day.
Listen, if you can sell 50,000 units of a book in a total run, you've done well.
You've done it. Speaking of which, it's a new world of new challenges. Do you know that? LegalZoom. If you need legal help to overcome yours, there's LegalZoom. You want to know the best way to protect your family? You're thinking of starting a business? Don't let legal questions hold you back. LegalZoom, helping with the right solutions for over 19 years. It's amazing that it's been 19. Protect your family with a will or a living trust, or start a business with a DBA, LLC, or a nonprofit. Get started online. If you need guidance, their network of attorneys can provide service. And since they aren't a law firm, you won't have to leave home and you won't get charged by the hour. LegalZoom, right, Gary?
That is absolutely right. Visit LegalZoom.com today to take care of some important things you need to get done. That's LegalZoom.com. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
What's new in the Maxwell case, Ghislaine?
Well, we're going to talk shortly, I think. Gary, aren't we talking shortly with Alan Dershowitz?
We are in terms of where you and I sit in the studio talking to him shortly. For the listener, it will be coming up in our next episode right at the top.
No kidding. I can hardly wait. I mean,
and for those of us who watch on YouTube, Alan will be joining us via Zoom, so you'll be able to see him as well.
That's fantastic. So let me tell you on Maxwell. So they had a bail hearing. I had mentioned last week that the lawyers, they had the prosecutor, or at least one of the lawyers was a prosecutor who had prosecuted El Chapo. That screams to me cooperation at some point. Since the last episode, I will tell you that she did not get bail. They denied that. They said,
do you agree with that?
No. I think it's, frankly, I think it's ridiculous. It's, the idea.
Did they say she was a flight risk?
Yeah. Flight risk, number one, that she could go to France, that she had French citizenship or a French passport. And famously, the French would not extradite because Roman Polanski is still there. That in addition to that, she had made application that she would stay under I assume under electronic monitoring at a hotel in New York, which, by the way, that may be uncommon in other places, but in the Southern District of New York, that is not. I mean, it isn't common, but it certainly is not uncommon or unheard of.
Is there a suicide version of flight risk?
Wouldn't that be the whole idea? God forbid anything happens to her while she's in custody. I remember in real time when we talked about Epstein, we said the fact once that there was no video or a missing video, you were never going to put that to bed. And sure enough, I mean, now you mention Epstein, even completely rational, doubting Thomases will go with you. Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It makes no sense. And that's forever going to be the case. If anything, God forbid, happens to her while she's in custody, just write it off. I mean, because there's no way that you're ever going to convince anybody that it was suicide.
But it's academic, because if something happens to her in custody and you think it's suicide or you don't think it's suicide or it's homicide, it's still the dead men are telling no tales. I mean, in
her case.
Now, she also has a trove of material.
Exactly. You read my mind. Obviously, we're on the same page. I mean, I think she has had enough time. She's smart enough. And they found certain items that she probably has downloaded whatever she knows to her lawyers. I think when you hire, there's a perception amongst clients, and I don't know her. I've never talked to her. I'm just telling you what my experience is over 40 years. My experience is when clients want an ex-AUSA, Assistant United States Attorney, there's a reason for that. They specifically want somebody who's going to either go in, work out a deal, or somebody who think they're connected so they can avoid a trial. You generally are not looking at a ex-AUSA if you want a trial lawyer, so to speak. If you want a trial lawyer, you find somebody who tries a lot of cases, and there's just a handful federally because federal criminal jury trials are all but extinct at this point. In fact, any federal jury trial, whether it's criminal or civil, is virtually extinct.
I heard she has copies of whatever Epstein had, but who has what Epstein has?
My speculation,
and then what do we need her
perfectly.
What do we need her doppelgangers for if they have what Epstein has?
I don't think they do. I think that my guess is that they're probably, if there was anything, and I would suspect there is, they've never unraveled his finances. I mean, there's always the connection to the speculation of the guy who owns
do you think it was
Unlimited.
Was it all about extortion, or was it? So there's three categories
of conspiracies.
No, there's three categories of if you decide. If I'm going to invite Hulk Hogan over to my house to bang my wife and I film it,
right?
There's three categories it can land in. One, pleasure.
Right.
I want to see the Hulkster mount Lynette.
Right.
That's number one. That's number one.
Where on a bell curve, where do you fall in that?
Listen, I'm not going to speak personally about Lynette.
Okay.
Right.
That's like when somebody asks, would you want, if something happened to Paulette, wouldn't you want the death penalty on the killer?
Right. You're asking me to cross the line. I won't cross that line.
Okay.
So I'd either watch the Hulkster bang the bejesus out of Lynette.
Okay.
That's number one, for pleasure.
Do you think he would bang the bejesus because he's kind of a big guy?
You know what? I don't want to get mired in this.
Okay.
Let's say it's Rowdy Roddy Piper, a smaller wrestler. Or
how about Steve Stone Cold Austin?
It doesn't even need to be a wrestler. Now to think about it.
Could it be a... Okay, go on.
Let's have it be Greg Louganis.
Okay.
All right.
It's more unlikely.
But...
that would be I was
thinking of someone with a smaller build. But,
so I was
athletic.
thinking because you wanted somebody for the pool.
Athletic.
Okay.
Let's just make it the Uber driver. Okay. A, I want to videotape it for my own pleasure.
Right, for viewing.
B, there's an extortion part of it.
Who would you be extorting?
Well, these guys are filming famous people being with underage women and then seeing it,
because I was always going to think that part of your motivation could be if there's ever a divorce, Lynette, here you go. I've got.
Well, then there's kind of a safety thing, which is, hey, if you ever think about going to the feds and talking about me, I got this videotape.
I got this video of you.
Right. So there's a pleasure. Look, the guy was a perv.
Right.
No doubt that he wanted to relive this in the comfort of his own den a year later. Look at the videotapes or whatever. There's definitely this where did he get his money extortion kind of part of it, and then there's a sort of protection. And I got it all in the safe, and if you want to go roll over on me, I'm going to release it, kind of thing. So, what do you think his motivation and or her motivation was for the fact that they were going to memorialize all this stuff with tapes and photographs and things of that nature? Because, look, I've been to enough bachelor parties where someone pulled out their camera and someone screamed, threw a beer at them, like, put that fucking camera away. Enough of those. You don't pull the fucking camera out. Okay, so
luckily for me, my bachelor party was before there were cell phone cameras.
Somebody pulled out one of those winding cameras with a tripod and put a hood over them. Big poof of powder came off. No, so I'm saying you don't want that stuff filmed, depending on what your mindset is, but there's other versions of it.
There's just, there's
think like a criminal.
It could be a hybrid, because I've had famously the case. In fact, speaking of Shapiro,
Mark at his bachelor party had a courtroom sketch artist in the corner.
I had a case where
Mark would walk
the guys
over. Come on, my dick's wider than that. Give me a break.
I I want like when Gary takes our pictures for Reasonable Doubt, and he always says, "Don't be on the end because it makes you look bigger." I was like, "Get on the end, get on the end." So I had a case that Bob Shapiro had tried and lost, and it was a guy who was accused of having sex and rape. And when the family came in, the family said, "Do you think we can get the tape?" And I said, "What tape?" And well, it turns out there was 2 counts or 2 complaining witnesses in the case. And in the first instance, they had filed the case, but it was dismissed at the preliminary hearing. The client was so kind of upset about that because he said it was consensual that then whenever he had sex, he taped it. And he had a tape of the second one. But Shapiro didn't use it at the trial. And the guy was convicted, put into custody, facing life. And why
didn't he use it?
Well, he signed a declaration under penalty of perjury that he was worried, Bob did, about you can Google this. This is in the papers. I'm not saying anything that wasn't public. Shapiro, Garrigus, or Google it. He signed a declaration, something to the effect that he was worried about the exposure for an unlawful taping, which last I looked is a misdemeanor for the client. Versus rape and a life sentence. So you go figure. That was part of my argument for a motion for new trial, which was granted. We got it thrown out, and the case is pending another trial. But that tape, wow. I mean, that tape is like nothing you've ever seen. And mind you, the female who said that she was raped and it was not consensual and she had very little memory of it, wow. Either she was lying or I want to know what drug she was doing so that, and boy, to you, because this was like nothing you've ever seen. I mean, it was platinum level.
Well, I guess if you're rolling on your sex, you would tend to up your game. You know what I mean?
It was her.
Wow.
It wasn't
and
him.
She didn't even know about it.
No,
huh?
She didn't even know.
So what do you think? I'm going to tease it, but are they
tease it?
There's film, I guess, of the sexual acts. Now, if you are Prince whomever or a high roller and you're going to this island, that camera is hidden, right? I mean, you haven't consented.
It's like when I was filmed with Michael Jackson on the airplane. I didn't know. I didn't know for a second during that Extra Jet episode.
I thought, were you recorded?
Recorded.
Not filmed.
Filmed?
Oh, filmed.
Yeah, filmed. They claimed there was no audio, but then there's something that just recently came out. Somebody's been tweeting at me that somebody wrote a book and said that there was audio. It was always their position there was no audio, but we were filmed. It was a pinhole camera on the private jet.
So the motivation for filming this would either be for you to enjoy it at a later date. There's an argument for that. But it also seems like insurance/extortion as well.
There's so many. I guess, in the law they have what's called mixed motivation, but I'll just tease it and then let.
All right. Well, but I want to know, you have a vast amount of experience with this. A guy like Epstein.
I actually have more than you'd ever want to know. And I've got a vault. I've got my own vault of stuff.
And Maxwell is what I'm saying is why did they do it? And what was their motivation? All right, first let me tell you about NetSuite and Oracle. America's ready to get back to work, but how do you go out there and win the new economy? You need every advantage. Smart companies run on NetSuite by Oracle, the world's #1 cloud business system. With NetSuite, you have visibility and control over all your financials, HR, inventory, e-commerce, and more, all in one place. Whether you're doing $1 million or you're doing hundreds of millions in sales, NetSuite gives you the visibility to control and manage every penny. Join the 20,000 plus companies who trust NetSuite. Am I right, Gary?
You are absolutely right. NetSuite surveyed hundreds of business leaders and assembled a playbook of the top strategies that they're using as America reopens for business. Receive your free guide, 7 actions businesses need to take now, and schedule your free product tour at netsuite.com/doubt. Get your free guide and schedule your free product tour right now at netsuite.com/doubt. netsuite.com/doubt.
So I'll tell you what my experience is, because virtually, and I may have a skewed experience, I'm usually hired historically by the person who there is a tape of, and the tape is usually something that you don't want out there. And my client is having to either pay or expose the person or talk them, the person who's come to you to get the money, out of releasing the tape, so to speak. So that's generally my experience, that these tapes that are supposedly between consenting adults turn out to be somebody tries to shake you down to get money so that they don't release it. And that's generally anybody who's high profile or has a position or married or whatever else. That's how the tapes are used.
How is there obviously there's no way to ensure that they don't have a copy of the tape when they hand over the copy of the tape, but the deal is it cannot be released.
Yeah,
right?
What I generally do is in the old days, I counsel now the opposite approach. It used to be in the old days, and I'm talking years and years and years ago, I would have them sign a declaration under penalty of perjury that they've turned over everything, they've got nothing else, they don't have this or that they have checked this, that they didn't tell anyone else, blah, blah, blah. So you've got them pinned down in great detail under penalty of perjury, have it notarized, signed, or videotaped, and then that generally has worked with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions out of probably 100. Nowadays, I try and counsel whoever's doing the shakedown that, I'll give them examples of cases that has not worked out for. David Letterman case is a good example. Or I will cite, ever since the Michael Jackson taping, I've told them surreptitious taping doesn't work well. Look at that guy. He's now dead, who orchestrated it, whose lawyer. He had a lawyer who was trying to sell the tape. And he ended up getting prosecuted federally, getting sentenced, having a large fine. I hit him with a $23 million, $25 million judgment. I mean, it did not work out well for them. Although his first words out of his mouth from the lawyer when I called him up and said, "Are you insane?" was, "My client thinks he's hit the lottery." So when you have something like that, people tend to default to money. They always want to monetize it. So that's my experience, is that they always want to monetize it. You've got a more conspiratorial bent than I do.
Well,
or you think of, I always think that maybe it's the Armo in me. I'm always thinking that they want to monetize. Everything is monetization.
I always just find it fascinating. I find the narrative fascinating, which is, it's like, Bill O'Reilly did I don't know what with whom, but he paid out $30-something million or some version of that. Letterman had a room outside of his office, and he had sex with interns or an intern or two.
I saw your big new intern here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
okay.
I'm clearing out my side office for him. He's a tall glass of water. Yeah. Ryan's a big boy.
Ryan is a big boy and a handsome young man.
So, but the interesting thing, which is obviously you're a pariah if you're having sex with an intern. But if they attempt to blackmail you and then you get out in front of it and announce that you're being blackmailed, then all the focus turns on the crime of blackmailing versus the indiscretion of having sex with an intern, and he ends up walking away, A, without paying for the blackmail, but B, without paying in the minds and eyes and hearts of society.
I think
as well.
I don't think that's the case anymore. I think now it would be an existential struggle between, do we hate the guy for being extorted? Do we hate the extortionist? Or is the extortionist really somebody who's woke, who's exposing this?
It's also kind of an interesting sociological experiment, which is Letterman has always, and long been the darling of sort of Hollywood and the news. Like him and Jon Stewart are on sort of the Mount Rushmore of guys they like in Hollywood versus, I don't know, James Woods,
right?
Let's say. So,
would you put Bill Maher there? Or is Bill Maher like Trump trying to get on the
Bill Maher is not anywhere near it. So when Bill Maher, and Bill Maher's close. When Bill O'Reilly gets caught with some sort of dust up, they go at him.
Oh, my God.
Guns blazing, right? When it happens to Letterman, it's kind of like, we're going to approach this a little differently in terms of the media, in terms of Hollywood, in terms of the public opinion. So a lot of it is kind of what they think of you going into this. So back to Ghislaine Maxwell. So bail seems risky for her.
So if you're the judge and I make this pitch, I say she's not going anywhere. She didn't leave the U.S. By the way, I don't know anything about her, but I'm going to speculate that they made the argument that the reason that she had the various passports is because she travels internationally. And by the way, she's probably being pursued by the press relentlessly. It's probably the biggest get you could have in the media right now is to have her talk. And so she wanted to keep a very low profile. Look what happened when she was here in Eagle Rock eating a burger at In-N-Out. It went around the world in a matter of minutes. So all of the things that people say are consistent with flight are equally as explained by the fact that she's pursued as kind of a get.
I'm not thinking as much about flight as I'm thinking about a possible hit, like maybe an assassination attempt or either suicide or contract.
But if you're the prosecutor, that comes back to bite you in the butt because you say, my response would be if they're arguing that, hey, look, whatever you want to say, Epstein, by all accounts, according to his own legal team, was in no mood to commit suicide, and that is, as of right now, unexplained. In fact, the Southern District indicted, I believe it was the Southern District or Eastern, indicted two of the correctional officers for, extreme negligence, obviously, by definition, because it's criminal. So obviously the Bureau of Prisons can't keep her safe, so why is she going to be any safer in custody than out of custody? Kind of a variation on the coronavirus letting prisoners out argument.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that we have corrected that and we're now in a totally different protocol and we want to keep her or we can keep our eyes on her because I'm scared she's going to go out there and someone's going to put a bullet in her head or she's going to put a bullet in her head.
That she would commit suicide. Yeah.
It's hard to argue. What I'm saying is you can argue with the flight part of it. Give us your passports. We'll put an ankle bracelet on you. We're going to put a guy out front of your door.
Right.
And that kind of stuff.
Security.
But you can't argue about the suicide because we can't really control that once you get out of this cell or out of our custody. And it might be hard to control a hit. I mean, if somebody was hell-bent on, a drive-by kind of a situation.
Or poisoning your Grubhub or something.
Right. That would be sort of my argument for not letting you out.
And I'd say, yeah, but all of that is speculation because the one thing we do know is that her closest confidant and the whole reason that she's been charged, that guy ended up committing or dying, and it's still not a slam dunk that it was
what
suicide.
Did they offer? Did they offer flight?
They offered flight and a danger. They had
What's the danger part?
The women who came forward and said they didn't feel safe because she had groomed them.
Oh, yeah. I'm not sure about the danger
I was going to say, what do you think about that danger? Danger to the community. She might come out and groom me.
You see, I wouldn't. The flight's something. The danger's nothing. We're keeping you in custody because we're fearful that somebody's going to try to take you out. It's sort of hard to argue against that because who knows if that exists or not.
Yeah, because that would make my head explode as the defense lawyer if they made that argument. I'd say the last time you tried that, you guys failed miserably and you still haven't solved the problem. So why are you going to keep her in? I've thought that the grooming and having, I understand that a complaining witness can say anything about anyone, but when you've got a lawsuit pending, it tends to diminish your bona fides, in my opinion.
Her attorneys basically also offered up confinement. saying that she could be confined to a luxury hotel in Manhattan,
right?
If that was something that they were okay with.
They've got the. I've had that client.
Yeah.
I've had the exact same thing where there was a $1 zillion bail, electronic monitoring, house arrest, whatever you want to call it, and in that case, it was with a luxury apartment.
So how fast? But again, she can still kill herself. How fast are they going to move ahead with this now that she's in?
Not at all, because the courts were at a standstill. We're just starting to open.
And did they not want to motivate her to move? You've talked about before that when we keep you in, it gives you incentive to move it along.
Her trial date is July 2021.
And by the way, if they shut the
Jesus Christ,
and if they shut
she's going to be in for that long?
Well, yeah, because the rumor is right now, as we're taping this on Friday afternoon, the rumor is they're going to close the courts down again. And, it makes perfect sense. I was in the appellate department, as I told you last week. That is if you're going to shut down restaurants, you're going to shut down indoor congregations. It makes no sense to me that you've got people going in and out of Stanley Mosque downtown. That courthouse is anything but sanitary, anything but antiseptic. And by the way, there's guys in various states of
people get
disarray.
Like the bubonic plague from rats in there. Maybe the bubonic plague will kill the coronavirus. All right, let me hit our last spot. Jordan Harbinger, the Jordan Harbinger Show. This episode is brought to you by the Jordan Harbinger Show. You can check it out if you like a high quality and a fascinating podcast. Well, listen to our friend Jordan Harbinger. Interviews heavy hitters. I've recommended this guy for a long time. Talks to guys like Mark Cuban and co-founders of Instagram and lots of real interesting movers and shakers. He's a real thinker, this guy, and he's going to open your mind to a lot of insights. You'll always find something useful, and you can apply it to your own life. We enjoy the show, and I think you're going to enjoy it too. Search The Jordan Harbinger Show. That's HARB, as in boy, IN, as in Nancy, and IN is and as in Nancy, GER on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you listen to podcasts. All right, we're going to cut this one a little bit short because we got a heavy hitter waiting on the other line. You can go check out my stand-up this Friday, Saturday, July 24th, 25th, Dallas, Addison Improv, 2 shows next week. After that, back to Texas, San Antonio, August 31st through, July 31st through August 1st. And you can go to amcarolla.com for all the live shows and get my aforementioned book. I'm your emotional support animal. What do you got, Garrigus?
I'm looking. You're going to Dallas on the 24th and 25th?
Mm-hmm. That's this Friday, Saturday, or the next one?
That's this coming Friday and Saturday.
This coming Friday and Saturday. Text me or email me, okay? Maybe we'll have like first world problems. I've got V Palm Springs.
If you're flying out there, I'm fucking flying with you.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. I've got V Palm Springs. Get down there before the governor shuts down all of California again. Capri, Southampton, and New York. I think we've got several days with no deaths in New York, so that's open. Naya, the new pop-up restaurant. Engine Company 28 can eat outside and fend off the mentally ill. And Tenny, Mediterranean Tapas. I'm going to, Gary, next week, remind me, I'll show you one of our diners who was able to get into hand-to-hand combat, and then the hot dog guy tased the mentally ill woman out front of the restaurant. So thank you, Eric Garcetti, for making L.A. a wonderful place to do business.
So until next time, Adam Carolla for Mark Garrigus saying mahala.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Tune in next Saturday for an all-new episode.